Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuhu. Dear students, in today's lecture we are going to see types of preference shares. See, there are 8 types of preference shares based on the above 4 conditions, that is right to dividend, option to convert, right to vote, option to recover. See, under right to dividend there are 2: cumulative preference shares, non-cumulative preference shares. Under option to convert there are 2: convertible preference shares, non-convertible preference shares. Under right to vote, participating preference shares, non-participating preference shares. Option to recover, redeemable preference shares, irredeemable preference shares. These 8 types of preference shares today we are going to see in detail. The very first one is cumulative preference shares. See, the word cumulative means increasing. This comes under right to dividend. Okay. Cumulative preference shares. Cumulative. The word cumulative means increasing. Cumulative preference shares are those shares on which dividend goes on accumulating until it's fully paid. Accumulating means to gradually increase in number or amount. So can I say cumulative preference shares are those shares on which dividend goes on increasing until it's fully paid. Now see, this means if the dividend is not paid in 1 or more years due to inadequate profits, then this unpaid dividend gets accumulated. This accumulated dividend is paid when the company performs well. Now, let's say company issued preference shares this year. Okay, the company properly paid dividend as there was adequate profit. In the coming second year, company again paid the dividend. But in the third year, there was no profit. Okay, there was no inadequate profit to pay the dividend. So now, in the fourth year, company is going to pay dividend for the third year as well as for the fourth year. So can I say the dividend goes on increasing? The dividend is getting accumulated until it's fully paid. That is, until it's fully paid in the fourth year. See, in this image you can see it clearly. It goes on increasing and it goes on accumulating. Now the other words for accumulating is accumulation, increasing, increase, aggregating. It's again and it's getting collected as we saw. So collection. See, the arrears of dividend are paid before making payment to equity shareholders. When we are talking about preference shares, okay, the word preference itself says that they have got preferential rights over equity shareholders. So can I say the arrears of dividend are paid before making payment to equity shareholders? Now what are arrears? Arrears are nothing but the dues and the balance which company is supposed to pay. It's a liability of a company. Okay. See, the preference shares are always cumulative unless and otherwise stated in the articles of association. See, all the shares, all the preference shares are cumulative unless it's said in the articles that it is not a cumulative preference shares. It may be any other, but it should be mentioned in the articles of association. If nothing is mentioned in the articles of association, that means those shares are cumulative preference shares. See, it means that if dividend is not paid any year, the unpaid amount is carried forward to the next year and so on until all the arrears have been paid. Now see here, in the first year company paid the dividend, in the second year company paid the dividend, in the third year company was not in the position to pay the dividend. So now in the fourth year company is going to pay the dividend for the third year as well as the fourth year. So can I say the dividend for the third year and the fourth year are the arrears to be paid by the company. Okay. Coming to the second one, non-cumulative preference shares, opposite of what we just saw. Okay. Dividend on these shares does not get accumulated. It's not collected. Okay. This means the dividend on shares can be paid only out of profits of that year. That means that particular year. Just now we saw the example. Suppose in the third year, company is not in the position to pay the dividend. So now in the fourth year, company is not going to pay the dividend for the third year. Company will pay only the dividend for that particular year, that is fourth year. The right to claim dividend will lapse if company does not make profit in that particular year. Lapse means invalid or it will expire. Okay, if dividend is not paid in any year, it is lost forever. This is very important. See, if dividend is not paid in any year, it is lost forever. That means it's not going to be collected for the next year. Third one you have got is participating preference shares. The holders of these shares are entitled to participate in surplus profits beside preferential dividend. The holders of these shares are entitled to participate in surplus profit, excess profit beside preferential dividend. That means once the dividend is paid, they are going to participate in the rest of the profit of the company. But that is after paying to the equity share holders. The surplus profit which remains after the dividend has been paid to equity shareholders up to a certain limit is distributed to preference shares holders. That means, see, in this one particular year, the dividend is paid to the preference shareholders, the dividend is paid to the equity shareholders. Now still there is some profit, there's some amount is there lying with the company. So yes, preference shareholders have got the participating right in that particular profits of the company. Fourth one is non-participating preference shares. These preference shares are deemed to be non-participating if there is no clear provision in the Articles of Association. Deemed, considered. The preference shares are considered to be non-participating if there is no clear provision in the Articles of Association. It means that if company wants to issue participating preference shares, they are supposed to mention participating preference shares in the Articles of Association. If it's nothing is mentioned in the Articles of Association, it means it is considered as it is non-participating preference shares. These shareholders are entitled to fixed rate of dividend prescribed at the time of issue. Just like the normal preference shares, the rate of dividend will be fixed at the time of issue of those preference shares. The other words for deemed is suppose, considered, regarded, think, said, believed. Okay. Coming to the fifth one you have got is convertible preference shares. Convertible, the word itself says you can convert. See, the holder of these shares have a right to convert their preference shares into equity shares. The conversion takes place within a certain fixed period. Let's say that the company issued preference shares in this particular year and the company says this is convertible preference shares. That means, and the company will mention the time after what these shares are going to be converted. Let's say the company says these shares will be converted into equity shares after 5 years. So can I say these are the convertible preference shares which are going to be converted into equity shares after 5 years by the company. Okay. The sixth one you have got as non-convertible preference shares. These shares cannot be converted into equity shares. It's as simple as that. These shares cannot be converted into equity shares. Non-convertible is permanent, irreversible, unalterable, inconvertible, unconvertible, permanent. Okay. Seventh one is redeemable preference shares. See, redeemable preference shares. Shares which can be redeemed after certain fixed period of time are called redeemable preference shares. See, when we were doing features of preference shares, we saw one feature as nature of capital. Preference shares do not provide permanent share capital. They are redeemed after certain period of time. Redeemed is, that means company buys or company pay off the money and take the shares back. A company limited by shares, if authorized by the Articles of Association, issues redeemable preference shares. A company limited by shares, we have done this in 11th standard under types of companies. See, the Companies Act 2013 provides that a company limited by shares means a company that has the liability of its members limited up to the face value of shares. For example, a shareholder who has paid 75 on a share of face value 100 can be called upon to pay the balance of 25 only. Companies limited by shares are by far the most common and may be either public or private. This is just for your understanding. What you are supposed to remember is all these blue box which I have highlighted. The very first one is shares which are redeemed after certain fixed period of time are called redeemable preference shares. Second, a company limited by shares, if authorized by the Articles of Association, if there is a permission, if the company has got authority under the Articles of Association, then only company will issue redeemable preference shares. See, the other words for authorized is empowered, has got approved, sanctioned, okay, have licensed, have the permit, have the authority, has the allowance to do so. Now these two, such shares must be fully paid. That means if these redeemable preference shares must be fully paid up. These shares are redeemed out of divisible profit only. Very important. These shares are redeemed out of divisible profit only or out of fresh issue of shares made by this purpose. Now see here, redeemable preference shares. That means the company is supposed to pay the amount and take the shares back. So from where the company is going to pay this amount? These shares are redeemed out of divisible profit only. That is company's profit only. Company is not supposed to pay the asset and get the shares redeemed. No, company cannot do that. Company can redeem these shares only out of divisible profit, or the other option is to have some fresh issue of shares. Fresh issue of shares means the company can again issue few more equity shares and pay the amount from these fresh issue. Now see, divisible profit means profits or a portion of profit that can be legally distributed as dividend to the shareholders. Those amount which is kept aside to pay the dividend to the equity shareholders or to the preference shareholders, from that amount only company is supposed to redeem redeemable preference shares. The eighth one is irredeemable preference shares. Shares which are not redeemable, that is payable only on the winding up of the company, are called irredeemable preference shares. See, if I say that the company is going to pay off only at the time of winding up of the company, that means is it almost the same as equity shares, right? See, the most important part, as per section 55(1) of the Companies Act 2013, a company cannot issue irredeemable preference shares. Company has got no right to issue irredeemable preference shares. That means if company issues shares under preference shares, that means company has to pay the amount after certain period of time, or else company can get those shares converted into equity shares. But company cannot keep irredeemable preference shares. So these are the 8 kind of preference shares. An assignment. That's all for today, class. Thank you.